Sports, 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 sports.
Hey there, sports fans. Welcome to Sportsball, part of the SPDM Group Podcasting Network. We talk about sports related topics, but we focus on you, the fan, and what you like, whether it's a sport, team, athlete, sports related news, or sports related event. So I did this with the NFL, so I'm going to do this with the NBA as well. I've got some predictions for what I think is going to happen this year in the NBA. It's going to be a very exciting year, so I'm really looking forward to this. So the first thing that I'm going to predict are actually two kind of things that I'm looking forward to. So I think this year the number one broadcast is going to be the NBA on NBC because all of us people who grew up watching the NBA on NBC will flock to that as just some comfort food. So we'll see how that goes. And I think the transition for the TNT guys to go from TNT to ESPN is not going to go as well as they hope in the first year. It's going to take some time for them to get things situated and get things figured out. So, those are some off-season things that kind of happened this year that I'm predicting for this coming NBA year. So, for the NBA season as a whole, some of these are going to be pretty obvious. Some of these are going to be like, I wonder what Mike is smoking, but just hear me out on a lot of this stuff. So the first one is that the Eastern Conference is going to be historically bad this year. And this is not a hot take. It's definitely going to be a thing that the West is going to be jockeying for, a number of teams to get in, and there's going to be a couple teams that are going to get left out in the cold. Whereas in the East, I believe the top three will be above 500, and the rest of the teams are going to be below 500 because the East will be that horrible this year. However, one team in the East that I think is going to do just fine is the Boston Celtics because they're built for having long-term sustainability. Joe Mazzulla is a pretty good coach. You've got Jalen Brown, who is going to have a showcase year. I think he's really going to be auditioning to be the number one guy at some point. So I think this is going to be a big year for him, even though the team looks pretty hollow right now. But for right now, I believe in Jalen Brown. I believe in Derek White. I think the team is going to be just fine. As for the West, I think the West is going to be a bloodbath this year. However, my kind of bold prediction is that I don't think either LA team is going to be very good. And mainly because every time I believe in the LA Clippers, they burn me. So you know what? This is the first year that I'm going to be like, I no, I don't see it. Now, the team is very deep, and Ty Lue is still a great coach, but that team lives and dies by Kawhi Leonard, and I don't trust the guy at all. And I really believe that the team's age is really going to show. So, you've got players like Chris Paul, Brooke Lopez, you have, even James Harden looks old. So I don't think either LA team is going to make it out of the first round this year, unless both of them make like a drastic trade or that Bradley Beal turns in, cranks up the fountain of youth and just goes completely ballistic, or Luca goes completely nuclear on everybody, or that Rob Pelinka just happens to get a couple key free agents. However, one thing that I will say about the West as well is that I think the Dallas Mavericks are going to be just fine. I think Cooper Flag and Anthony Davis are going to do very well with one another. They need a replacement point guard for Kyrie Irving, so we'll see how that plays out. But I think Dallas is going to be just fine, despite the fact that I think if it's not this season, it's next season. I think they're going to can Nico Harrison, especially for just this historically bad trade of Luka Doncic. But whatever, we'll see. I predict that this year, the first fired head coach will be Willie Green of the New Orleans Pelicans. And I will say that a lot of it is not his fault because David Griffin before him was, he had some decent moves, but injury luck has just not been great. The other issue is that the current regime, the Joe Dumars and Troy Weaver tandem, have made some very questionable decisions. So I'm not exactly sure what they're going to do from this point forward, but they had a very curious offseason, so I'll, wait to see. But I think if there's going to be a fall guy at first, it's going to be Willie Green, and that sucks. And then I think the next head coach that's going to be fired this year is Doc Rivers, mainly because Doc has not really had a affinity to adapt who he is as a coach. So I don't think Doc Rivers is going to last till the end of the season. I think this will be a Hail Mary move that Giannis demands at some point, and he's going to continue to flex his muscle. But yeah, I don't see Doc Rivers lasting the rest of the season. I got a couple stars on the rise this year, and obviously Luca is a sexy pick for this, mainly because he's slimmed down. He looks like he's in shape. Blah blah blah. So we'll see how that goes. Look, to me, it's not even about him being in shape that I think is going to make him like an all-time player. I think if he just clamps down on defense a little bit more, and if he's got the personnel around him, and if he can just stop complaining about ref calls, I think that will be the thing that I kind of see as something that will show true growth and evolution. So I think Luca is a pretty good pick for somebody that is going to have probably a really good year in the NBA. As for a star that I think is going to have a slight downturn a little bit, I I do think that Jalen Brunson's gonna struggle a little bit in the what is it? He's gonna struggle a little bit in the Mike Brown system at first because Mike Brown is gonna try to be a little bit more judicious and try to focus a little bit more on defense. So, and Jalen Brunson is not very good at defense, but neither is Cat. But at least Cat's big and he can protect the paint. So we'll see about that. This year, I have a couple first-time All-Stars, and Victor Wembanyama is the sexy pick here for this. Even I'm not sure if he was an All-Star last year, but I think I think the big ones that I think this year, I think Chet has a really good chance to be an All-Star this year. Uh, I can see a scenario where Franz Wagner of the Orlando Magic, if he doesn't get injured, has got a good chance to be an all-star. And yeah, I think that's it because look, if Jamal Murray is going to like he's a pretty good pick to potentially be an all-star, but I don't see a whole lot of scenarios where he will be an all-star this year. I think a couple of the guys in Houston have a pretty good chance to be all-stars this year. Taking a look at their roster, I think the big one, Alperen Şengün and Thompson, I think would be the two picks for me for that. So those are some predictions for all-stars. So team on the rise, team that's probably going to have the biggest differential with record this year. I think it's going to be the Atlanta Hawks. I think the Atlanta Hawks, with a couple years under the Quinn Snyder system, I think is going to do. I think they're going to do really well. They got to get their injury luck on their side, so we'll see how that goes. However, I will say that I do think that this is Trae Young's last year in an Atlanta Hawks uniform. So, team on the decline this year. I'm thinking that it's going to be the Minnesota Timberwolves with a slight nod to the Golden State Warriors. Now, the Minnesota Timberwolves, I think, is going to be a team that they're going to look old. I think Gobert's he's not going to get much better at defense or anything like that. I'm waiting to see if any of their young guys are going to step up. But between Gobert being older, Mike Conley being older, and the loss of Nikhil Alexander Walker, those are some of the reasons that I think that they're going to have a decline. However, I do think that Ant is going to have like a fantastic year. I think this will be the first year that he finishes maybe in the top seven, if not top five of MVP voting this year. Next, I think that this will be LeBron James' penultimate year. I think he's going to retire next year, and I think this is Chris Paul's last year in the NBA. I don't really have any reason to say that. I that's just kind of what I think. The next team that is going to be sold in the NBA, for the love of God, I'm just trying to will this into existence, has got to be the Chicago Bulls because Jerry Jerry Reinsdorf just not not a sports guy. He needs to sell them and he needs to sell the White Sox and he needs to sell them now. So I think the Chicago Bulls are going to be the next team that gets put up for sale. I don't think that it's going to reach the historic levels that the Lakers got sold for, but I think in like around that Celtics range, probably a little bit less, like $5-6 billion. I think it's highly possible for that. NBA MVP prediction this year, I think it's going to be, oh, this is going to be tricky. I think Victor Wembanyama has a good chance to be the MVP this year, along with Luca. But if you put a gun to my head, I think this is the year that Jokic comes back into the fold. So I think those three have got a pretty good chance. And speaking of Jokic, I do think that the NBA champion this year at this particular moment will be the Denver Nuggets. I think the Oklahoma City Thunder have a really good chance to repeat this year. I don't think that they can replicate the injury luck that they had last year, even though I think the big things from an injury standpoint will be that let's see if we can get Chet, a good chunk of the way through the season, and assuming that he improves at some places. But I'm a little concerned about how J Dub's hand is after everything that he said about the playoffs. So we'll see about that. But I do think the Denver Nuggets have a really good chance to be the NBA champion this year. Last prediction that I have is that I think that NBA expansion will not happen next summer. I think it will be the summer after when like right before the Olympics. So we'll see how that goes. But those are my NBA predictions. What are some NBA predictions that you have this year? Let me know in the comments below. But that's going to do it for this episode of Sports Ball. Be sure to like, rate, and subscribe to anything and everything SPDM Crew wherever you get your podcast. Join us on social media on Facebook, Instagram, X, Threads, YouTube, LinkedIn, and Blue Sky at SPDM Crew. Check out our website at spdmcrew.com. Shout out to High Flyer Creative Studios for making our awesome logos. Greatly appreciate their support. And if you have any marketing, logo, or brand standard needs, contact them at highflyercreative.com. Check out the other shows on our network. We've got a lot of great content, so please check out the other shows on the network. That would be greatly appreciated. And if you've got a podcast idea or you're interested in being part of the SPDM crew as a guest or collaborating, email us at spdmcrew@gmail.com. Until next time, pain heals, chicks dig scars, glory lasts forever.